peppy.
Yeah, it is peppy. Did you want to do that?
I did not want to do it.
Oh.
I made a decision. Yeah,
What's the last thing you said? You made it?
I did not make a decision.
Did not make a decision. Okay. So that's the only possible wrong answer.
Potentially.
No, it really is. If you just said yes, then we're good, you know?
All right.
I want to temper how much we'll delve into the following tangent. But I know that at the beginning, we talked about this word interpretation, right? And we had a bit of a discussion about whether or not we really have any right whatsoever to interpret Stravinsky, or Mahler, or Granger, or Persichetti, or Maslany. You know, is interpretation required in order to make these things that these composers have processed, created, presented? So that's a great, fun thing to follow for the rest of our career. But should you choose to interpret, it's a perfect example, and you can get off the podium if you'd like, or you can stay if you'd like. I want to have you started just again in a minute, but a perfect example is the symphonic band right now is playing the Morton Gould Symphony for Band, one of the cornerstone masterworks called the West Point Symphony. Gould wrote it for the West Point Band on the 150th anniversary of the Military Academy at West Point. It's a masterwork. I have a recording by a learned scholar named Gene Corporon at Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, playing this piece of music. And I have a recording of Tim Foley at the United States Marine Band, playing this music. Two sources that should be trustworthy and learned, use that word again. There is a march that happens in the middle of the first movement that is marked quarter note equals 104. Corporon in Cincinnati go quarter note equals 134. And Foley and the Marine Band are at quarter note equals 112. And it's a march. It's a military march, and it's an American, obviously, West Point military. So what's tempo march is supposed to go? In America, 120. British marches are more like 112, and then we have quick step things that can go faster. But I find it fascinating that Corporon went 30 clicks faster than what's marked. Foley went 8 clicks faster than what's marked. Neither of them, nor what's indicated on a score, is American march tempo 120. Now, I'm choosing to go with the Marine Band because I think 112 is much more appropriate for an American march than 134. And I think the Marine Band probably has better resources to figure out what Gould wanted for the West Point Band than Corporon did. And one little thing for you guys, especially the windows that are going to be out and maybe listen to Gene Corporon recordings, all due respect to the man, he is wildly inconsistent, and composers around the planet go crazy about Corporon's recordings because they're mass-produced. You probably have a North Texas, Cincinnati, Gene Corporon, this clavier wind project started in the mid-90s before wind CDs became easier to get. They were like the only ones to get. You have to just understand, at the beginning of my career, it was hard to find wind band recordings. And it's exciting that even just 15 years later, it's kind of hard for you guys even to imagine that it was hard to find a Hindeman Symphony recording. They're everywhere. But in between hard to find and everywhere was Gene and Cincinnati and then North Texas. So he records everything and he gets it out really fast. But he doesn't talk to the composers. And I've gotten to know a bunch of people that came out of North Texas Wind Symphony and Gene's ensembles over the years, and they confirmed for me in the recording sessions. Professor Corporon is well known to regularly say, change this to this because it's better. He just does it on his own. And then the composers get excited, they get a beautiful CD in the mail of their new piece that Gene Corporon and the wonderful North Texas Wind Symphony records, and they pop it in, and he's changed stuff. He's changed the tempos, he's changed the pitches, he's changed the rhythms, he's changed the percussion scoring, and they go crazy. So I know this about Corporon, so 134 has less merit, right? What's it say in the score for this one? You got it in front of you, you don't have it in front of you. Oh, help him, help him, what's it say?
Allegro.
Allegro, right? So you have some legs, right? What's Allegro mean? Peppy, yeah. Walking, right? No, that's Andante.
That's what I'm
Right, right, right.
Allegro's happy.
That's the Allegro, yeah, so it's quickish, right? So you're justified there, you know, and I think with the light staccato, it's peppy. So I was thinking you were gonna say, yeah, it said Allegro, when I asked you if that was the speed you wanted.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a little bit bold because everybody else has been taking it sort of more like a Andante than they've been in Allegro. But, getting to the sum of this again, and this is not just about you, man, okay? Everybody in here would be in the same boat if they were standing where you're standing right now. When you conduct your music, colleagues, don't take a tempo because you didn't make a decision. You know? Make a decision. Make a decision and have some thinking in your head about why you did it. You know, the Gould I'm doing right now, I chose 112. And I just told you why. Because it says 104, but there's these learned recordings that are out that don't do 104. I'm basing it on my experience with the American style of a march, which I know Gould was going for. I think I can trust him fully in the United States Marine Band, that we bump it up just a little from 104 to 112. And I know a lot about Gene Corporon, so that 134 I think is a little suspect. And that's plenty. I mean, I can stand behind the lectern and defend myself in the court of musical interpretation with that all day long. You know, you will lose in a court of musical interpretation if you say, I went to speed because it felt right. That's a favorite. It feels right. You know, what's that? And then, especially, I don't know. So, again, we're in basic conducting class, and I appreciate the fact we get to talk about this. You know, you just helped give us the opportunity to discuss this element that we're going to be with our whole lives. Summary quote, Percy Granger once said, do not go the tempo that is written. Do the tempo that is right. I always love that quote. You know, you take it in a grain of salt with Granger, for who he was. But he says, don't go the tempo that's written, go the tempo that's right. You contrast that with somebody else we're dealing with right now in Symphony and Wind Symphony, or start dealing with the next cycle, John Mackey. John Mackey is a technical wizard, and if he doesn't have a real recording that he loves, he'll put the MIDI up on his website. And he's got the MIDI down to a science where he's got every articulation the correct way, correct quote unquote in his mind. His tempos are like absolute. He feels like don't mess with them by 8 clicks or it's wrong. And he wants every interpretation the same way he set it up to be on the computer. The way he is. Maslanka, as he ages, we're learning, he's going back and forth a little bit. A lot of Maslanka's life, he was a tempo absolutionist, if that's a word. It just is now. One of my favorite Maslanka Kim Reisinger stories, because Kim is a force of nature too. You know, that's like the unstoppable object and the immovable force, where you get Maslanka and Kim in the room. It's awesome. And there's this flute thing, the songbook for flute. Well, Steele tells this story, and it's a beautiful, beautiful story, where Kim wanted to take one of the movements way different than the tempo that David had written. And Dr. Steele has worked with David once or twice, and he knew he's not going to go for that. He wrote down this is going to be what he wants. And Kim said, I'll talk to him. You know, I mean, you gotta hear Kim's thing, you know, we'll talk. And Steele thought, all right, good luck with that, that'll be funny. And then he came. And it's like the middle movement or something, to get through a couple of movements, and most of you have been in a Maslanka rehearsal, you know, he's going to stand right next to him with the music stand. Fine. They get cooking in the movement in question. And Dr. Steele says, I kind of smiled to myself when just a few measures in, I got the tap on my shoulder. You know, just a few measures in, he says, excuse me. And Steele says, I was smiling, thinking, here it comes, tempo's totally wrong, and I was going to be right. And he says, he points at Reisinger and Steele, he says, what's going on here? So what are you talking about? Maslanka said, there's a weird energy between you two right now. Can you believe, man's a shaman. He said, what's going on between you two? And he sort of blushed, and he said, well, Steele said, I know the tempo you want, but she doesn't want to go with that tempo. He throws her under the bus, like, hey, I am pious and devout, and she's the miscreant who wants to mess with your perfect tempo. And this is where Steele's jaw really hit the floor, because Kim is another shaman, I suppose. Because Maslanka went, all right, let's go her tempo. Steele just about threw his baton down on the ground. I was like, what? You know, you've never let me change the tempo my entire life. But she wants to change the tempo, it's okay. And they went her tempo. They tried to move it, and he went, well, I didn't think I was going to like it, but it works just fine with her tempo. She sells it at her tempo. So that's okay. Tempos and conductors. It's all variable, right? It's all fluid. Kim felt strongly that she needed to do this, blah, blah, blah. She had some verbal rationale. Most importantly, she sold it musically. She sold to David that the tempo that she had in her ear could be profound and powerful and correct. And he was open to her suggestion, and it worked. Some composers don't, others do. What's the fascinating thing is to go get some of these historical recordings. I have a Hindemith conducting the Hindemith Symphony, and he doesn't follow any of his own tempos. That'll bake your noodle. Wait a minute. Stravinsky's wild for it. I have recordings of Stravinsky doing symphonies and wind instruments. He doesn't follow his own tempos. Like, who wrote these down? If you don't want to go there, those tempos. Whoa. So, get up there one more time. Tell me your ready position, would you? That is higher, I think, than you were when you started.
Probably.
I think you were low a bit. Even your elbow was back just a touch. Okay? So just start us off and we'll move on.